This is governed by the Kampala, by KCCA, and it falls directly under their mandate. But the Member of Parliament, from a supervisory perspective, needs to work very carefully with KCCA to ensure that many of these initiatives are being developed. I think, with time, the roads are going to get better. If you look around, you see what's happening in some places of Kampala. There's massive construction. I think there's something big happening on Acacia Avenue that connects Kalmocha and the rest of Kampala. And I think there is a plan in place. You have the flyover. Some are being done by KCCA, some are being done by National Roads Authority. So there's been some progress. But to answer your question specifically, Kampala traffic or Kampala congestion is not just a problem of Kampala. Because during the day in Kampala you have over 5-6 million people. And these people leave the city and they go to live in Mukono, they go to live in Kira, they go to live in Entebbe, they go to Wakiso, and so on and so forth. And the Kampala, the KCCA and the people who are in charge of this need to find a way to align themselves with the other municipalities around Kampala to try and tackle this issue. This is not purely a Kampala issue. It's just that the traffic happens to come into Kampala. Take, for instance, look at the rail service between Mukono and Kampala. It stops bang in the middle of Kampala city. But it has to work between here and Mukono for it to be effective.
Well, Cedrick, at that point, I know some of your roles as an MP would be resource allocation.
Yes, appropriation.
And oversight role.
Yes.
But what has been the problem of physical planning in Kampala, even with the billions of shillings that Parliament has been allocating and what KZ has been collecting as revenue? As an MP to be, where is the problem? Do you tag the problem to things to do with the leadership?
Well, of course, everything. As they say, it all starts with the leadership. It all starts with the ability to communicate regardless of political affiliation, because we all have objectives. And the objective for everybody within Kampala City, Kampala District, is to make Kampala better and to empower the people of Kampala to live better lives. So once these elections are over, what we need to do is to sit around the table with the leaders. At KCCA, now we have the executive, we have the mayor in his office, we have the MPs, we have the division mayors, we have the local councillors. We have so many people who are involved in this chain, from the top to the village level. We have to sit down and actually look at this plan. The plans are there. They always have been there, and I think that what is at KCCA, it's there. It's not like they're sitting there and there's no plan. The question is that sometimes some of these things are politicized and personalized to the point that there's a stalemate. Things don't happen. But I think that once the agencies and all the leaders can sit in the room, and even if it means, we've got many problems. We have so many problems. And we need to just pick one problem and sort it out. If it's infrastructure, let it be infrastructure for the year 2021, 2022. If it's unemployment, let it be unemployment for the year 2021, 2022. And then if it's housing, same thing. But everybody needs to align to one objective. You can't all have different objectives. As they say, too many cooks spoil the broth. All of you need to align to one objective. And the role of the MP is supervisory. We can't force KCCA to do it, but we can try and convince them.
But people do not want to account, because one of your roles as an MP would be holding people to account what you allocate. And the biggest problem has been that leaders at the helm of KCCA leadership hardly want to account.
Well, you see, what we're doing here is we're accusing somebody of something without having the facts to back it. Of course, there are issues around mismanagement of funds, whatever it may be. But I, Cedrick, cannot sit here and actually accuse somebody of doing that. What I need to do is to is to get into office. And once we get into Parliament, we have the Public Accounts Committee, which is constituted of members of Parliament. If we really must scrutinize expenditure, if we really must scrutinize budgets, that's where we do it. You know, you don't go into the public domain and accuse somebody of doing something. There's places to do it. And that's the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament. And that is where a member of Parliament can exert their influence. I can't walk into City Hall and tell the executive director what to do and tell the mayor what to do.
But you are an ex-official. You become an ex-official when you become
yes, I agree. But it doesn't, you see, human beings are not robots. Human beings, you've got to learn how to work with other people. And working with other people, you know, there are times when you have to keep quiet, there are times when you have to listen, there are times when you have to speak. So you've got to do a lot more listening than speaking and be able to contextualize what exactly is the problem. Now, when it comes down to management, that I think should be a core ingredient of an MP. How do you manage people? And at the end of the day, and how do you relate to people? You have to have a certain affinity with people. I'm sitting here, you can feel the vibe I'm giving you. If I'm giving you a bad vibe, it's very hard for you to conduct your interview. But there's nothing tangible. You can't accuse me of anything. Bad vibes don't have, they don't come in boxes. You don't find bad vibes on a shelf. So what we need to do is to have good vibes. We need to be able to relate, to make people feel like they can come to you and you can go to them. Because there's nobody who has a monopoly on ideas. We do have blueprints. We have the National Development Plan. We have the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Strategy. We have Vision 2040. How do we actualize them and put them into one bunch and actually make them work, objective by objective, over the next 5 years?
Well, but some of the reasons that have been advanced have been that they suffer from underfunding. Well, that's the reason that is why they have failed to implement what they want to implement. Do you find reason in it, given the revenue tax base of Kampala that often that KCCA collects?
Let me say something to you. I mean, and I think you already know this. Most countries in the world, and I'm hard pressed to find one who isn't in this situation, they do not have enough money. Even the United States of America, as you see, has debt. Everybody has debt. The question is, how do you manage your debt and your underfunding? Money moves in cycles. What creates the problem is the leakages in the cycle. Money moves in cycles. Everything moves in a circle. The minute you break the circle, just imagine the circle is in, you know, like there's a tube in water. If you cut any part of the tube can't work. The water is going to come out, right? So what we need to do is to manage the leakages. There's never going to be enough money, right? Even if we got oil, you know, once the oil is extracted, the final investment decision is made, there's always going to be an issue of how the money flows in a cycle. So we have to have people on the finance committees, people at the Ministry of Finance, people who work with the money to ensure that the money can service our needs. And that's what we need to do. Kampala is big, but it's not as big as many other cities. It's not as big as Lagos. It's not as big as Johannesburg. It's not as big as Nairobi, if you understand what I mean. So we're still in a situation where we can manage. But we just have to be really tight on keeping the funding in the cycle.
Well, let me get you on issues to do with climatic change. And I want to talk about here the greenhouse emissions. Kampala is becoming a chimney, I would say. It's becoming a chimney whereby you have DMCs, several factories around Kampala, all causing air pollution. What plans do you have?
You know, I was reading the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Strategy, and I chanced upon a particular part of the document where there was, and this was passed through the Prime Minister's office in 2016, and I hope I can share it with you one day, in the sense that the government, under Operation Wealth Creation, was supposed to actually send people to industrial parks. So there'd be industrial parks for artisans, there'd be industrial parks for different parts of the population. Then what would actually happen is that we would try to start to move industry into these respective industrial parks, and each of them creating between 250,000 and 400,000 jobs, which would actually mean that we would reduce the pressure on Kampala city. Of course, right now it's probably not realistic to do what the Nigerians did by moving Lagos and creating Abuja. I don't think we're in that space yet, but I think there's still an opportunity, especially with our young population, to push people into those respective industrial parks and build a socio-economic infrastructure around those industrial parks, and schools and all these different things. And I think that, going back to what I said in the beginning, there has to be a collaborative effort between the municipalities around Kampala, Entebbe, Wakiso, Shira, all these different ones, so that everybody bears some responsibility for what is happening in Kampala, because they're all beneficiaries. Kampala, maybe 15 years ago, you didn't go past Intinda and those sort of areas, but now we've gone into Chira, we've gone into Chiwature, we've gone into those different places. Chisasi, those are places that didn't really exist as neighborhoods. But if you go to Nalia now, on its own, it looks like a small satellite town, because they're beginning to develop their own infrastructure. And the same thing in Mukono, and the same thing in Gayaza. You can see bits and pieces. Now, of course, with the infrastructure being created around the bypass on the way to Entebbe, you can see the amount of life that has been brought to...
Do you look at plans to relocate some of the bigger factories at the heart of Kampala city? A viable deal to reduce greenhouse emissions. But of course, it's also, how do you weigh yourself in that kind of which is going to be a conflict between politicians and businessmen?
Well, I mean, now we have the new industrial park, which is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. Namamve, it's relatively new, if I'm not mistaken, and that is where big business was supposed to go. The factories, you have Kapeka, which is just in Luero. So you have those particular places have been designated for factories. So we have to maybe sit down with big business, medium-sized business, to have that discussion. But at the end of the day, my role centers around being able to speak with big business, because what we're not going to do is approach them from a draconian perspective that, grab them and throw them out. No, because they contribute so much towards our GDP. Kampala is 22 to 25% of our GDP comes out of Kampala district. It's a lot, huh? That's a lot of money, because our GDP this year was supposed to hit about $30 billion US. So you can imagine 22% of that is quite a lot. I think that's what, 6 billion or something like that?
Around there.
Something like that. So it's actually more. But anyways, just to think of it, we have to have these conversations. But again, with the agencies, with the municipalities around Kampala, the other city authorities, we need to sit down around the table and plan our objectives. These plans within the National Development Plan, especially three, especially the Vision 2040, the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Strategy, whatever's happening in the Mayor's office, we need to pick one or two things and do them well. You can't do everything at the same time.
Well, Cedrick, we need to go in for a short commercial break.
Yeah.
When we get back, we will be tackling issues to do with congestion in Kampala city. Welcome back from that short commercial break. And again, my guest, to lay those up, just joined the conversation, is none other than Cedrick Babu, the NRM flag bearer for Kampala Central MP.
Yes.
Well, at the time we did go in for a commercial break, we were dealing with the issue of congestion in Kampala city. Kampala has become a worm-eaten house. Even previous regimes have failed to push out the unnecessary and planned border cyclists, matatu drivers. How do you weigh yourself in this debate that has always ended up burning fingers of many?
It's complex in the sense that, first of all, you know the border riders, the taxi operators. These are people, and the touts, the people who sit in the taxis. These are people who earn a living from doing this. So it affects the others who aren't. So we have to create a balance. We have to understand the needs of the border riders. The border riders, I think they're made up of 54 different groups or something like that. And the taxi operators, it's similar, you know. And you're talking about groups of maybe 300,000–400,000 people on either side. So first of all, we need to look at the humanity of it. If we do have a solution, it has to take into consideration, even if something was to happen, in terms of addressing the issues around climate change, the issues around congestion and pollution, what do we do with these young people?
But you are talking about decongesting Kampala, having a planned Kampala.
Yes.
When you move in these big major cities,
yes,
you hardly see such a confusion that you see in Kampala. Border cyclists, matatu flying left, side and right, poor traffic procedure or management. Somebody wonders.
I think it's quite the opposite. If you go to
as political leaders, how are you going to manage this?
You see, I'd like to take one step back and correct you. Most big cities in the world have had similar issues, if you want to make a comparison. If you look at New York, if you look at London, if you look at Tokyo, if you look at Beijing, if you look at Johannesburg, if you look at most Lagos, the problems are there. So we have to take best practice. Like I've said, it doesn't need to be heavily politicized. What we need to do is to address what is the consequence. For example, if you wake up in the morning and you say, you know what, we're going to cancel borders, why would you do that? You can't do that, because these are people who make a living from the border. Then there's also the border itself. There are people who make a living from selling the border. There are finance companies that finance this, banks that exist from actually these transactions. So the cycle, it affects everybody else. So we have to find a solution that suits everybody. Now, as the infrastructure starts to improve, as the quicker you can get to Entebbe, the quicker you can get to Wakiso, the quicker you can get to Gayaza, the quicker you can do this, then the city starts to grow. So there's less pressure in the city. So those particular cities start to grow. And if you look at Johannesburg, for example, if you go to Johannesburg, just after apartheid, a small satellite city called Sandton was built. Sandton became the financial district. If you go to London, it's Canary Wharf. That's the financial district. If you go to New York, they have their own financial district, and Tokyo, and so on and so forth. And with development comes the opportunity to help people to move in a respective direction.
So, in other words, at the moment, you still need border cyclists and matatu driver at the heart of Kampala City.
No, we have to consider these are human beings. They are people who ride those bikes and make money from those bikes, and who drive those taxis and make money from those taxis. You can't just wake up in the morning and take away their living. You understand what I mean? So maybe it's a case of spending a bit more on and faster in terms of building the infrastructure that allows people to get out of the city quicker and choose. And you know, there's many different things that have happened during this COVID period. And I hope everybody's staying safe, you know, putting on their masks. I have mine. So, but one thing we've learned is that many of the things that we do, we can do remotely. So there's less pressure in Kampala. Now, if there's less pressure in Kampala, there'll be less pollution. So,
well, now, let us talk about issues to do with the slum. You have about 3 major slums in your area of jurisdiction that you tend to represent in Parliament. Mm-hmm. You have Chifumbira slum, you have a part of Katanga, you have part of the Chisenyi areas, and these other Chibulu areas. What plans do you have for people who live in those slums, who the urban class claim that they have turned out to be a den of insecurity, a source of insecurity?
Insecurity is not caused by the people who come from slums. Insecurity is caused by unemployment. The more and more people that are unemployed in this city, for example, the population in Kampala Central was somewhere in the region between about 17 million in 1986. Today, we're 42 to 43 million people. So if you look at the growth of population, there's one thing, you can't make more land. Nobody can make more land. So there's a lot of pressure on the land in Kampala. I think it's a bit unfair as well to say that people in slums are the ones that cause insecurity. Insecurity is caused by unemployment and desperation. Nobody's born wanting to be a criminal. It's out of desperation.
Do we need slums?
Do we need
slums? At the heart of Kampala City?
No, we don't. But like I said, slums are a direct function of unemployment. People not having resources. So they build makeshift muzigos and, you know, places where they can stay. So this is what we need to do. We need to find creative ways through government, through local government, through the private sector and our networks. This is why you go and vote for MPs like me. Because we are the people who have the networks to help go down to the village level, simplify doing business. If you find somebody in Chifumbira, you gave an example of Chifumbira, which is in Kamocha, and you said to them, okay, we're going to invest 200,000 shillings or 500,000 shillings in 100 chapati owners, people who make chapatis. And they're going to employ one more person, and they're going to produce chapatis for the whole of Kamocha or for the other villages within Kamocha. Don't you think that it will have an impact on the community? Because that person is able to improve their quality of life, to build a better house or to rent a better house, maybe to move out of the ghetto, right? Or improve the life within the ghetto. 80,000 people in Kampala district practice urban farming. Let's leave government alone. Let's leave local government alone. I understand their procedures, their budgets. There's not enough. We understand that.
But we also understand, and this is something that has not been addressed even by previous leaders, the health situation in slum areas in Kampala.
Health?
Yeah.
Health
services. They hardly have hospitals at the center of the slums.
That's true. And I think, again...
Is this something that bothers you?
It does.
That many as these people live in shacks, have no serious health facilities, schools are not within the slum areas, apart from Chipumbira in Kamocha, yes. KCA Primary School,
yes.
But others, children trek long distances.
Correct. You know what, you're 100% correct. Health is wealth. And, you know, I was speaking with my friend, Dr. Charles Ayume from Koboko, and he said something to me that resonated or stayed in my mind for a while, that if you get head trauma in Koboko, The nearest hospital for treatment, for a CT scan or an MRI scan, is 525 kilometers away in Kampala. So if you hurt your head in Koboko, your chances are very limited in terms of sorting it out. So within the health committees of Parliament, we need to find people who understand health and the business of health, because there is absolutely no reason why every village or groups of villages cannot have a health center that is fully equipped. I keep hearing about ambulances and who should have ambulances, but where exactly are they taking you is the question. Because wherever you go, you have to be treated. So why don't we try and take some resources and put them into the respective clinics in the villages? Kampala has 135 villages. So let's say there were 5 health centers in every parish. There are 20 parishes. I think we could go a long way, and I think that the resources are there. I don't like to accuse the people that have held office or the people who are in office. I think I'd rather be more focused on what I can do and what me and my support team can do to improve the health situation in Kampala.
Does Kampala Central need a referral hospital? Because I can see Chirudu is the other end of Kawempe.
Even Mulango, yes.
But of course, Mulango is a national referral whereby your people are not allowed to get in there unless if they have referral from Chirudu or Nakawa Hospital.
Right. Listen, like I said, there needs to be more hospitals in Kampala. The pressure on Kampala Central and Kampala District is very heavy. You know the numbers. 6 million people in and out every day. You know, it needs a lot of help in the health department. But we have to find the resources. We have to sit with the health committees. I'm not a medical doctor, but there are those who are medical doctors. Dr. Cheng, who is now running for office as a member of parliament. She was an ex-officio of parliament before, but her and her team have done a great job with COVID. Uganda does have COVID cases, but maybe not as bad as the rest of the world. Dr. Diana Twine, all these different people. These are the people who should be running the Health Commission. Because at the moment, for example, in Parliament, there's only one doctor on the Health Commission.
Well, Cedrick, as we come into the end of this interactive race 2021, a quick one. Well, Parliament enacted the Landlord and the Tenancy Act, but that very act has raised issues in Kampala, where you see landlords want to be paid in dollars. They do not want to receive shillings.
Yes.
Do you have a problem with that?
No, well, you know, it will be very hard to receive rent in dollars, simply because you're going to have many of your tenants complaining about it, because they earn money in shillings. And the landlords, I guess, are pegging against inflation, if I'm not mistaken. That's what they're pegging against. So it could be a bit of a problem in terms of getting the majority of tenants to pay you in dollars. Although I do see where the landlords are coming from in terms of pegging inflation, but maybe this is something Bank of Uganda and the Ministry of Finance need to come in and discuss, and the Finance Committee at Parliament is to discuss how to protect both sides of the equation.
But it all starts with you, members of Parliament.
That's why I'm saying the Finance Committee. They need to come in, look at this equation and see why. Why do you want it in dollars? Because people earn in shillings. But that's fair enough. You know, what you want is not necessarily always what you get. Because how many people are going to pay you in dollars? People don't earn dollars. They earn shillings. The majority of people in Uganda earn Uganda shillings. So paying you in dollars might be a bit difficult for them, especially in times like this. We're in hard economic times. You know, nobody is trading, probably very few are trading globally or making their money in US dollars. So the Finance Committee in Parliament has to sit there, whoever's on it, and sit with the Bank of Uganda, the Ministry of Finance, to find a happy place for both the tenants and the landlords.
Well, lastly, but not least, is Do you have any reservations on the Kessie Act?
Well,
where we see powers, Lord mayors, these are people you're going to be dealing with.
Yeah, I think
they no longer have powers. All powers were under the law were tilted to the executive director.
I understand, you know, and this is something that was enacted in 2010, 2011, and at the time there was a stalemate between the government and KCCA. Again, you know, we have to sit down as parliamentarians, sit across the table from the mayor. He's been around for a long time, the Lord Mayor, Arias Lukwago. Of course, there are other mayor candidates now. So whoever is the mayor at the time, we have to sit down with them and try and align this. Because, you know, the political differences, the personal differences don't really help the people. They don't help the intended beneficiary. And at the end of the day, the people of Kampala are intended beneficiaries. So we have to look at them and then look at how we can solve the problem. There's so many things we can do. You have the youth. We have a very young population. 70 to 80% of our population is young. We have to find solutions for them.
At that point of the youth, it brings me to the last question, the unemployment issue.
Yes.
The unemployment figures are so alarming.
Yes.
What plans do you have for them?
Oh, listen, the youth are probably something that I've been thinking about for a long time. There's so many avenues. We need to directly partner with best practice to try and invest in their businesses at the village level. Number two, we need to invest in the things that they like. For example, pass legislation on the things that they like. Take, for instance, music. Music in Uganda, we have a lot of talented musicians, but there is no ecosystem for the entertainment industry. Where do you make money? Copyright, you know, all these different things. How do we use their talents to actually make them a living? Look at sports. You've seen recently Cheptegei, Kiplimo, all these Nakai, all of them, you know, performing at world level and making incomes, if you understand what I mean. And so we have to find an ecosystem and bring the business of sport, the business of entertainment, legislate for it so that it then becomes an income stream for the young people. They deserve the right to play, to make a living from it. We need to maybe look at the education system to make it a bit more flexible so that the people can express themselves. Because we don't have enough jobs in the civil service, we don't have enough jobs in corporate Uganda, so we have to find alternative industries. And these industries include sports, entertainment. Now, of course, very soon we'll have a fully blown or fully grown oil and gas industry. But the people at the grassroots, what are the things that they can grab onto?
Well, Cedrick, there's no democracy here, and I need to bring this conversation to an end.
Yes.
But we thank you for sparing part of your time to be part of the race 2021.
Thank you very much.
On STV. And I wish you a successful campaign trail.
Yes.
And all the best.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Our viewers, please stay better, but not bitter. And always remember that Uganda is bigger than all of us. Good night.